Welcome back. The time has now come for us to create our first subdirectory in our first web page file. So here we are. We're at the wichita.edu homepage. And when you registered for your access, we carried out the registration and we sent you an email with some information in it. And then it was a link to a page. And the link, if I were to type it up here in the address bar itself, would be wichita.edu / Omni CMS. That is the short URL, like we were talking about earlier, for the Omni CMS training homepage, as we have here. On the homepage, for a future reference as we go along, you have, of course, been here. That's how you got to these videos. But for a bit of a breakdown here, we've got a link to the support form here, the top right of the page. Down we have some details. We have a link to this quick start path. We have a resources path here, and that differs from the quick start path in that all of the different elements sort of go into basic editor work to a greater level of detail are in the resources path. You can start at the beginning and go through each of those topically if you want, or if you've forgotten some technique in the system, how to do something, you can go to that page and select from a menu and select the one that is what you're needing to refresh on. The live training registration will take you to the page where, if you would like to have a live version of the Omni CMS training, you can get it there. And down here, empowerment for web page excellence, we have a number of different links to additional tools and such. Website support homepage, that is our homepage on the web for all sorts of support topics are covered there. And as it says here, you can register for the live trainings there. You can look up guides for web page standardization. There are a number of support articles, links to YouTube videos showing certain techniques on an overall basis. The alt text guide, we'll get into alt text a little bit later, but alt text is text that's applied to any image that you place on a web page. In order for a web page to be considered accessible compliant, it has to have alt text. So the alt text guide is a sort of a resource that shows you how to alt text a variety of difficult to alt text image types. WSU Profiles fact sheet and the profile system tutorial videos. Those deal with the profile system. Those aren't covered in the quick start. They're a more advanced thing. We have a system built in place for individuals' profiles that auto organizes them based on department into their own web pages. And while it looks like Omni CMS type pages, they're not. They're their own thing. So they kind of require their own treatment. And that's sort of a couple of home resources for dealing with profiles pages should you need to. And we have a news section home. News section is another specific type of tool that can be added to a website. It adds what's called a news section, is just sort of a branching off series of articles. And what happens is sort of has a home piece on a web page, and you create other news article pages, and they're added to a revolving list based on date. It has a number of modifications you can make based on convenience and such, but those are profiles, and sections are sort of an advanced thing. So let's get to making our training directory. You have your access set up, and as part of your access, you were granted access to a directory called _training. If we look at the URL for this training homepage, see it's wichita.edu /_training /index.php. So that will reflect where we are in the directory structure of the website. And we'll get a bit of a visual look on this in a minute here. First thing we would want to do when we're starting our day, getting ready to work on a web page, is go to a web page that we have access to. And in this case, it's this one. And we would log into the web page. Now, of course, you're playing this video on another web page, but it's good to open a second tab with this web page so you can follow along. In general, I would recommend going through each step that I go through in this video. And at the end of a step or whatever, you can pause or work along with me, and you can follow the steps here, and you'll be able to create your training directory in no time. The first thing we need to do is log into the system. We have the access, now we log in. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the bottom of the page we want to log into. And this is best If it's a page that you have access to, if you attempt to log into a page you don't have access to, you're going to get a big white box saying you don't have access to edit this page. And that can kind of throw you for the first time. So go to a page that you have access to and you know it. And it looks like it's not giving me my copyright symbol. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. Yeah, it's taken a little bit. I had a spinning wheel up top. Okay. So we would go to the bottom of any page when we're logging into it. And you can see that there's a copyright symbol right here on here, the bottom left of the footer, close to the bottom left anyway. And note how it sort of lights up and I get a URL readout to the bottom left. This is actually a link for the login. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click that copyright symbol. And it's going to give me the central authentication service login. A lot of words. Very non-dexterous tongue at that moment. And you see, you enter your ID and your password and you log in, just like you do any other system. Duo kicks in and we're going to want to send a push. And I get mine on my phone as text message. You might have yours set differently, of course. Click my Duo, hit approve. And we are in the system. Okay, so we are right now in what's called backstage view. Backstage view differs from the live internet pages. And I'll show you why here. And I'll show you how to use this nifty little tool after a bit, but I'm just opening up another tab here. That's the same page. It's live on the internet. This is the backstage view of the page. Backstage view is where you apply your changes to a page. You do whatever changes you're going to. You save the changes at the end of the day. Those changes ultimately will not be published live on the internet, which is this page, until you actually publish the changes. That's important to remember. You might do a lot of work on a page, click save, look at the page live on the internet, and it may not have changed, and you may wonder why. You probably didn't publish it when you were completed with the work. You just need to publish the page. So we're in backstage view here, and we can see that our page is sort of outlined in a frame. And we've got a number of different tool tabs that have popped up. We've got a logo up here, a number of drop-down tabs. We have what's called a breadcrumb trail here, which we'll look a little more in depth at in a bit. And this is the file name of the web page file, index.pcf. We've got a few things here, multi-edit, checkout button, and publish. And what we want to do right now is we're going to create your training directory. Your training directory will be a directory named after your MyWSU ID, in which we will put a landing page and we will put a standard content page. These will be pages that you can practice with in the coming weeks and months. A lot of people over time will test out their ideas or practice building other web pages in their training directory. And that's basically what it's for. Not only is it a tool to learn how to do these things, but it's also a great sort of scratch pad, if you will, that you can go in and try out your ideas. So I'm going to go up to Content tab. I'm going to click. You see, got Pages, Assets, Components. What we want here is Pages. We're going to go into what's called Pages View. So go ahead and click that. So our view is completely changed. What we have here is we're looking inside the underscore training directory. The OmniCMS Wichita State website is organized very much as you might think a home computer would be. There's a sort of home, if you will, which would be here. See that house icon? It says Pages Home. Think of that as wichita.edu itself. And underneath there are directories. And they sort of span out. They're big general directories under home. And those big general directories will spread out and become more specialized as it goes, sort of like on a computer, for example, an old style Windows machine, you might have C drive, and under C drive, you might have program files folder and a couple other folders. And then in program files, you might have your files for your office products and maybe your games, something like that. And everything sort of branches outward as it goes down through the system. OmniCMS works the same way. In this case, we're in the underscore training folder. So WSU, wichita.edu right here, /_training. So we're starting to see the relation of a URL and the directory structure in the system. Now, if I look down a little bit, you'll see this is populated with a lot of my WSU IDs. I believe there's something like 800 items in here. If I look down here, 834. So we're going to add your training folder. Okay. Leave it like this. What we're going to do first is we're going to go up to the top right, and you have a new button. And there's a big new button, and there's a little drop down arrow on the side. We're going to start with the big new button and look at that. Just open it. Don't choose any options. Just open it. One thing that we will notice as we work in OmniCMS that there are a lot of different functions that can effectively be accomplished in more than one way, usually due to convenience for different user types, for example. In this case, if we click new, we get a menu of new options that we can choose from. Most of us who work in the web pages quite frequently don't prefer this version of the menu because it's big and you have to scroll through it. We actually prefer the drop-down arrow, which is the same menu, but all the icons are smaller. It's all in a compressed thing and you don't have to scroll through it. Now, we're going to create a directory like this, a folder like this. Your temptation would probably be under new to check folder. Don't select folder. The reason being is there are a few technical things that can happen if you choose folder that will cause you some issues in publication later. It's something that we could fix, of course, if you did it accidentally. You just want to submit a service request and you find your pages aren't publishing. We know how to fix that. But to save you from that from the first point, what we really want to use is section. Section creates what's called a section folder, and it is already set up to give a a subdirectory, so to speak. It's already set up to provide the files that are needed. So I'm going to select section, and I get a pop-up that wants some information as to what I'm supplying here. So the folder name here, the folder name will be your MyWSU ID. And in my case, I'm not going to use mine because mine's already in there somewhere. So I might go, just as an example, X45. I tend to, when I'm doing them, I tend to do them with the letters lowercase, just because most of them are in there, but that's, you don't have to. They can be whatever you choose. We're going to name the folder after your MyWSU ID. So to go ahead and do that, select all and copy if you want to, and put the same thing for the section title. The difference being the folder name is sort of the file name, right? In a file name in OmniCMS, there cannot be any spaces or any special characters. It's worth remembering. That'll become a little bit more of an issue later on, but it's this thing that we can go ahead and say now. Section title, friendly name for the section's title and our breadcrumb. That can totally have spaces in it if you wanted, but we're just going to leave it as the same thing as folder name. Page title. Page title, what I will usually do when I set up a training page for someone is I'll use their first name, '*S, in this case, landing page. So for example, if I was making it for me, it would be Jeremy's landing page. Like so. So go ahead and put your name, landing page, your landing page, whatever you want to say. What is a landing page? Well, we'll get into that a little bit later. Folder information up here, these are items attributed to the folder itself. These two are, when we get to general page setup, what we're doing is we're setting up the landing page that is going to be auto-generated by this process in this folder. The landing page that it generates is by default set up sort of under the idea that it's going to be the home page of this directory. Description. You can add a description in this page. This is what this is for is it is a description. It'll turn up in the Wichita State University search engine, the one that we have on our own site. If somebody finds and searches for the page. Tags. Tags are used by the same search engine to help find pages easier in the system. For example, in this case, This is a training page, so I might use a tag. There's a drop-down menu, or you can type what you want. Training. A lot of different things called training in there, aren't there? Training. And it's related to the web. So in the MRC, there's one I know from MRC Web. You can use tags if you want to on web pages like that. They just sort of make the search a little bit smoother. And if a tag doesn't exist, then basically you'll type it in and it'll take it as you tab it. Keywords are used by external search engines, Google and so forth. And I might put in Omni CMS, Omni, website training, or whatever. These pages that you're doing today, this is totally optional, and I'm just giving an example of their use, really. We get down to file configuration. These are some control aspects of the web page file itself. Add navigation item. There is a menu that appears at the top right of every web page in the system, unless it's specifically shut off. This says section menu. It used to say in this section. It was updated recently to section menu. And as time will go and you build pages in a directory, it will sort of automatically populate over time to add new pages or remove ones you remove. In this case, if you set add navigation item to no, it would not add the page to that overarching menu. We're going to leave it on yes. Overwrite existing. If there was another file with the same file name in the system, it would overwrite it, at least in this directory. There isn't going to be one anyway, so it's kind of a null point here. But if you were looking to, say, completely replace a web page with another web page, you could totally do that this way. And the access group, inherent from parent. The access group is assigned to you when you submit your registration in. We look up your access group based on the pages that you requested access for. For example, web services may have one that says web services with an underscore, web services, something like that as a access group. Now, only pages that we can access and edit, if that was the case, would be those under that access group. We couldn't go edit pages in other people's sections. Inherit from parent means it's pulling the access group from the directory that this directory is set inside. In this case, underscore training. That's perfectly fine in this case. So I'm going to leave it like that. But if you needed to change it, you could. You got a drop-down menu to select from. And if you needed one created that's not in the menu, you just simply fill out a service request form, send it in to us. We'd be happy to help you with that. So now that we have all those details made, I'm going to go ahead and click create X345. Just seeing that for my own memory here. Create. Bottom left, our new content is being created. So that folder will pop into existence for a second. And you see it sent us directly to a page. This is our landing page. So it generated the folder and it generated the page. So before it gets too far here, I'm going to pop back out so you can see the folder. Back to pages. Training. X345. Using the filter. You can use the filter by putting part of a word or the whole word in there. You'll eliminate all the other options. In a directory like this with 800 things, that obviously saves you a lot of scrolling. Our folder exists. There it is. And inside it, we've got two files, nav.inc. Nav.inc controls the in this section. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Index is the page we were just looking at in Pages View. Note that there's a light bulb here. That means that page is currently checked out to me. It was checked out to me the moment that it was created. There's also an indicator for unpublished. The page has not been published, so while the file exists and we can go edit it, this page isn't actually live on the internet until we publish it. So let's go ahead, click index, and we're back in our page again. And you'll see that up here, back to pages, training, X345, index.pcf. So this is the rest of the URL for this page after wichita.edu. Basically, it indicates where this will exist in the URL bar when it goes live on the internet. So the page is checked out. And what it means, this light bulb, if the page is checked out to me, and I can check it back in like that. But if I were to manually check this page out, what it means is that that page has been checked out by me to work on, but it's like a library book in that if you check out the book, no one else can check out the book until you return the book. So in order to work on pages, you have to check it out as I've done. Click the button and the light bulb lit up. When I'm done with my work for the day or whatever, I want to save it. And if I didn't publish it, make sure that I check it back in. Because if anybody comes along later and needs to work on the same page, they're not going to be able to if you have that page checked out. So I'm going to go ahead and check it back out again. And this page was initially created. I do recommend in a lot of occasions when you create a new page like this, even if it's something that you don't necessarily want to be public facing quite yet, go ahead and publish it. And click the publish button, and I have publish, and it says the file name index.pcf. The pop-up has a number of different things you can check, run all checks or other things. Spelling, links, W3C validity, and accessibility. And we don't have any problems there that we can see. In terms of accessibility, if you ever create a page or you finish up working on a page, and when you go to publish it, if a page finds a known accessibility error, it will not publish the page until that accessibility error is fixed. Of course, today we're just working on template pages, so it's not an issue for us today. It's just something to keep in mind for future. We could schedule publication of it if we wanted. Version description, you always want to use a version description when you can. I'm going to say initial publication. So I'm going to click publish. Publish is in progress, index.pcf. Bottom left, file is now published. There's a view a new window link. If I click that, it opens a second tab showing the page live on the internet. And this is what's called a landing page, as I was calling it earlier. Landing pages are basically intended to be either the home pages for all the subdirectories out there, or they're sort of designed to be flashy visual pages. You'll note that it has a big graphic, it has a button, an interactive box with a button. It has this right and left column organized visual element here. These are called snippets. We'll get into snippets a little bit later in terms of this. But they're meant to be kind of flashy. They're supposed to be the page where you present big and bold who we are, what we do, so on and so forth. And then from here, you would send your links out, and the links to the information pages. And those are usually what are called standard content pages. So let's go make a standard content page real quick. We're going to go back into our backstage view here in the other tab, and I'm going to click content pages. Quick thing before I do that, note that the light bulb is no longer lit up. When I publish the page, it automatically checks the page back in. That's a good thing to remember. When you finish your work, you publish your page checks itself back in. I'm going to click content. I'm going to click pages again, and we're back in our directory. I'm going to go back up to the new tab. I've got a drop down here. And in the options, I'm going to select standard content page. And we have a menu that's kind of similar to what we had when we created the folder. We don't have the folder options, and there's a little bit of difference here, but it's mostly the same. Page title, enter the page title displayed by search engine as well as the in-browser. I'm going to call this Jeremy's standard content. Just like previously, you can use your name. We've got, again, description, tags, and keywords if you want to use those. File configuration and navigation item, I'm going to leave it to yes. And file name for the standard content page, I'm just going to use standard content, underscore in it. This is the literal file name, so remember, no spaces or special characters. You call it to a degree what you want to. Keep it short if you can. Again, we've got overwrite existing and access group. I'm going to go ahead and create. So it's going to create the page. And like it did with the file and the other page, it's going to send us directly into the edit view for that page, the backstage view. And we can see this page here. I'm going to go ahead and publish it. Initial publication. And it's published. And there's our standard content page. So it's up there and good. So what I was saying about landing pages being very, very visual and sort of meant for that sort of a flash, lots of images, fancy visual layout elements that are actually very easy to work with, by the way, but fancy looking to the eye first. Standard content pages differ in that they are meant to be the information pages, the details, so to speak. Like you might say that a scholarship is available and you can go check out that scholarship on this page. And then they would come to this page and it would be the text detailing the details and how to apply for the scholarship, for example. These are where all the information and support are for the topics presented on the landing page in a typical website construction. They're used in that aspect. And you can see that the standard content page is a little less visually fancy than the landing page. There are differences. They both have a hero image at the top, of course, but the standard content page lacks the box with the buttons. And it has some text here. But if you look at these in edit view, you see something very interesting. I'll go ahead and kick this over, log into it so you can see. And I'll set this one back to the landing page. Check it out. Make sure they're both on edit and checked out. So you can see here that on the landing page, we have these green buttons. If I'm on the edit tab, which I'd have to select like so, you'll see these green tabs down the side. These are areas of the page that we go in and edit. And we're going to get into that a little more in the next session here. But if we look at the same thing on the standard content page, we have buttons, but they're a little bit different. We have a main content button. We have a sidebar content button. Sidebar is used typically for overall things like, for example, contact information, link lists, graphical link lists. When people will say use pictures or logos to link to another location, they'll use those in the sidebar quite often. Things like that are usually used there. And you'll note here on the main content button on the standard content page, there's some space between that and the edge of the page, whereas on the landing page there is not. There is simply is on the edge. That's because a landing page has no margin for text by default, because it's set up for visual elements that stretch across the entirety of the page. This gray dot background is a good example of that. We're going to get into why that is a little bit later, but it's one significant difference between these two types of pages is that as these are built for visual elements, they don't by default have a margin, whereas the standard content page has a margin already in it. Now you can totally add a margin on a landing page if you wanted to use it for a more text-based thing, yet keep some of the visual elements that you get with a standard landing page sort of setup. We'll get into that in a future session, but it's good to know the differences between the two types of pages for the moment here. Now that we have our two pages created, we're going to go back into the directory and we're going to look at this navinc file. So what navinc is, if I click on it, you'll see there's two links in there. And that's all they are, is links. There's no web page, there's no anything. What these are is these are the control for, if I look at one of the pages again, remember what I was saying about a section menu. And I click it there and there's nothing there. The navinc controls the section menu. It shows the links, so to speak, that will populate the section menu at the top. And in this case, we need to manually publish it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. No need to save it. Initial publication. The others. And when I do that, and I come back into my pages here, if I refresh them, open the section menu, I have my links. It's very, very handy, and it's very, very easy to modify. A lot of people are very intimidated by these at first, but navinc files are not hard to work with at all. We'll get into doing that in some detail later. So we've created your landing page, and we've created a standard content page to go with it right here. You see those links work. Congratulations, you have created your training directory and your first 2 web pages. Why would I have you publish them first thing? A lot of people, when they go to begin their edit work for the day, they will use the URL for the page directly to get there. Now, if you haven't published a page, but you use the URL for the page to try to reach it, it technically isn't on the internet yet. It's not live. So you'll get a 404 broken link and you won't understand what's going on potentially. So if you can, it's a good idea to publish that page first. You can totally go on another page that you have access to and log in and simply navigate to it using content pages and moving through the directory structure. But on the other hand, if you already have something published in the space, all you have to do is go to the URL and log in. So we've created a directory. We've created our training subpages. So next up, we're going to look at modifying some options in those pages.